See. Okay, ready? Go. I'd like to welcome you to Litchfield School District deliberative session. My name is John Regan. I live at 9 Chaseburg Circle with my wife Patricia. She's a ballot clerk out front. You met her already. And my sons George and Daniel. I'm your school district moderator, and I'll preside over this evening's or this morning's event. Mr. Phil Reed is my vice moderator still. So I had a Phil. Couple of administrative matters. State law prohibits smoking anywhere on school grounds. Please do not light up. Restrooms are located just past the auditorium on your right-hand side. Food and drink are not allowed in the auditorium floor, kind of. Concession sales are not here. As a reminder, it is against school policy to leave flyers on vehicles parked on school property, so don't do that. Before we begin this meeting, please stand and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we start, I'd like to introduce Mr. Barker to introduce his team of school board members.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to your favorite annual Saturday.
We have a microphone issue, I think.
Oh. Good. Hello. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to your annual favorite Saturday. Quick introductions. I don't know where to stand now. My name is Derek Barca. The vice chair is Trish DeLeva. Then we have Brian Bork, John York, and Dennis Miller. On the budget committee side, we have rather poor showing this morning. So we have Cindy Kucher, John Brunel from the town, Bill Spencer, and Chris Pascucci. For administrators, we have a few here. We have Mr. Leckladder from the high school. We have the director of HR, Tracy McCauley. You still can't hear me? Sorry. Okay. Can you pull the table that way? This whole thing? The whole thing. Wait. And we're going to reposition this maybe closer. A little cockeyed. You'd think we would have practiced this beforehand, but we didn't. Just not with me. For administration, we have Frank Markowitz, our business administrator, Dr. Cochran, our superintendent. We have Mr. Leckladder from the middle school, and Tracy McCauley as director of HR.
Okay. I'd like to now introduce Mr. Peoples. Would you introduce your budget committee?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. On the budget committee, we have Andrew Cutter, our chairman, Cindy Couture, John Brunel, who's the selectman's representative, Bill Spencer, Dan Valencourt, and Chris Pascucci, and myself as vice chair.
Thank you. Okay, so now the moderator's rules for the day's meeting. Litchfield is I should know these pretty much by heart. Litchfield is operating under what is known as Senate Bill 2 procedures. This means that the function this day is to review and discuss the warrant articles that have been presented here today and for us to vote on by official ballot on Election Day. Election Day will be on Tuesday, March 11th. Polls are open at Campbell High School from 7 a.m. to at least 7 p.m. According to state law, town and school district meetings are run by the moderator's rules. This means that the moderator sets the ground rules for this meeting. However, law also allows you to overrule the moderator's ruling by approving a motion to do so by simple majority vote. For this deliberative session, the moderator will read each warrant article and recognize a sponsor to speak about it. Then the moderator will open the floor for discussion. When you come to ask questions or discuss an article at any microphone here today, please clearly state your name and your street address so that the clerk can hear you. If a voter wishes to propose an amendment to an article, he or she must have that amendment moved and seconded before it can be discussed. If we make no amendments to this warrant, to these warrant articles, then they will appear on the ballot as you see them today. If we do make amendments to these warrant articles, then they will appear on the ballot as they are amended. Amendments to warrant articles must be handed to the moderator in writing. Index cards are available here at the front. You also have your handouts. You can use that as a basis and then scratch out the words you want to change and then resubmit that as the amendment. Note that an amendment cannot change the primary subject described in the article. The maker of a motion to amend an article will have the first opportunity to speak to it. Each proposed amendment will be brought to closure before any other amendment is discussed. At the CHS auditorium, non-voters may sit in the corner to the right as you enter the auditorium. So let me get can you wave all your non-voters out there? Excellent, thank you very much. As you entered the building today, the ballot clerk gave each of you registered voters a sheet of yes/no ballots. Everyone's got their pink ballots here, yeah? All you voters have your pink ballots? Okay. These are yours to use for secret ballots. Please do not drop them on the floor or leave them behind if you leave before the close of the meeting. Only those people who are on the checklist as qualified voters are permitted to vote to amend an article. If the moderator receives a complaint or notices a non-voter voting, then he will require the non-voter to leave the auditorium. The moderator must conduct a secret yes/no ballot when 5 voters make a written request prior to a voice, hand, standing, or division vote on the article. The moderator must conduct a secret yes/no ballot when 7 or more voters challenge any vote to amend an article immediately after the vote is declared by the moderator and before any other business has begun. Approval of all warrant article amendments at the deliberative session shall be by simple majority vote. A voice vote will be a primary method of voting. If the moderator cannot distinguish a clear majority with a voice vote, then a vote by hands and then standing will be used. Active campaigning for your favorite warrant article, handout standing with signs, is allowed in the hall outside the auditorium, not inside. Active campaigning within the auditorium other than to discuss an article when invited to do so is prohibited. The deliberative session is a forum at which we ask questions. More importantly, it's a place for debate. Proper respect and decorum will be expected at all times. Every effort will be made to give recognition to all wishing to speak. If you want to speak, you must come to the front microphones on the floor here. Board members, if you're speaking as a board member, please by all means discuss your article at the main stage microphone. If you're offering your opinion as a citizen, please move to the floor. All those who speak are to keep their comments pertinent to the motion. No negative motions will be in order, no personal attacks, no profanity will be permitted. All speakers will direct their remarks to the moderator. When a question is asked, the moderator will call upon an appropriate person to respond to that question. The moderator will allow one follow-up question when others are waiting to speak and will not allow running discussions, as best I can. A motion to call the question and stop discussion must be properly seconded before it can be considered. Voters who speak to an article may not immediately call the question in order to stop discussion about it. A motion to table an article will not be in order unless it is to table until a specific time and place before the close of this meeting. A motion to consider or reconstruct reconsideration of an article after discussion is closed will not be in order unless seconded and approved. Reconsidered articles must be discussed and closure reached before the end of this meeting. A motion to adjourn or recess will not be accepted until all warrant articles have been discussed. Members of boards and committees, members and voters will refrain from using acronyms. About halfway through, no, we're not going to do that, and that's it. That's 40 of them. Okay, so the first point of order. It is your prerogative to permit non-voters to speak at this meeting. It has been customary to allow employees, council, and non-registered residents to speak at these meetings. If it is your wish to continue to do so, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Okay, the ayes have it. Okay, here we go. Article A, to elect by ballot the following school district officers: district moderator, 3-year term; district treasurer, 3-year term; district clerk, 3-year term; school board member, 3-year term. Any discussion on this article? Hearing none, you'll find it on the ballot as written. Article 1, shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by the vote at the first session of the annual school district meeting for the purposes set forth herein, totaling $20,931,024.57. Should this article be defeated, the default budget will be $20,804,559. Let me do that again. It's tough to read it in English as opposed to numbers. $20,804,559. There we go. Which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Litchfield School District or by law, or the school board may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, Section 10 and 16, to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. The estimated tax impact is 27 cents. This is recommended by the school board 4-0. This is also recommended by the budget committee 8-0. Mr. Frank Markowitz will be speaking to the article.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be at my first Litchfield School Deliberative session. You have handouts. Handouts are available, and also if you would like, the Wi-Fi is available for online in the Litchfield School District. Just take a moment to explain the handouts before we get into some of the specifics. The handouts are basically a summary of the budget. The detailed budget is online, but the handouts this morning provide you with a summary of the operating budget and the food service budget. The first is a summary by function, and function basically are the general activities of the school district, and they're broken down into certain categories. And the 1,000s are the instructional areas, the 2,000 support services, the 3,000 operational and non-instructional, so on and so forth. The next summary, budget summary, is by object. That breaks it down by specific expenditures. And again, I won't go over each of them, but there are 9 basic categories to the specific object code, starting with salaries and right through to other and other use of funds. Again, these reports are available to you and will be online until Election Day. They can be found www.litchfieldsd.org. I wanted this morning to provide a bit of a clarification. Unfortunately, in a local newspaper, an article came out that stated a tax impact on the town side, which if the town's budget and warrant articles were to all be approved by the voters in March, the tax impact for a $300,000 home would be approximately $1,200. That's what was reported in the local newspaper. And I thought it important that we this morning clarify that so that there's no, I know there's going to be a retraction in the newspaper next week, but I think it's important for our deliberative session to be clear on the tax impact, and we will get into some more specifics later. But as an overview, if the town and the school operating budget and all the warrants being proposed were to be approved in March by the voters of Litchfield, the town impact is actually 37 cents per thousand. The school impact would be 60 cents per thousand. Again, that is if our operating budget and all the warrants being proposed to you here this morning are to be approved in March. The maximum estimated tax impact that we're looking at would be approximately 60 cents. So the combined total for the town and the school per thousand would be under $1 or 97 cents per thousand. The next slide in your handout as well provides you with our estimated tax impact, and I provided you again with the town as well as the school. This is again the estimated tax impact if the operating budget and all warrants were to be approved. And if you look down the $300,000 column for that $300,000 home, the total impact for the town and the school would be $291. The recommended appropriations, this warrant has 3 major components to it. It has the general fund budget, which is the operating budget for the school district. It has the food service fund or the food service budget, that operates our food service program here in the district, and our federal funds budget, which are monies that come into the district from a federal source. As you can see, for the proposed appropriations for 2015 for the general fund is $19,761,323, which is a reduction from 2014 of $55,792. Our food service budget recommended appropriation for 2015 is $594,702. That is a reduction of $3,774, or less than 1%, 0.6%. Our federal funds, we're estimating, because our federal funds are not received by the district until March or April, we're estimating to be approximately $575,000 for a total budget, as the warrant reads, $20,931,025. The next slide just provides you with the total operating budget for the district. As you can see, 94% of that is the general fund, which is, again, the general operating budget that we have here in Litchfield. 3% of our total budget supports food service, and 3% supports our grant programs. Some of the major categories of the appropriations in the general fund, as you can see, salaries is far and away leads the list of $14,743,738, all the way down to improvement of instruction, $106,643. The next chart, pie chart, just basically shows the percentages of the overall general fund where those monies go to as a percentage. And again, salaries and benefits for the district in our operating budget represents 75% of that budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. So Frank went over kind of the high-level overview of the budget. I was going to dive a little bit deeper into the major increases and decreases in the budget, and where a lot of the big changes in the budget are. First off, for increases, we have our largest single increase is in increases in health and dental insurance. Our guaranteed maximum rate for next year is 8.3%, 8.4%, which comes to roughly $125,000. The next major increase is parent and monitor salaries. These are new positions in next year's budget that are required by law to service students with IEPs that have special needs. The next large chunk is for furniture and equipment, just under $60,000. This includes a lot of items, but the biggest items are some new tables in the high school cafe here. They're 13 years old now and just starting to fall apart, so we need to replace those. We also need a new lawnmower for the district. It's not just like your home push mower, it's like a big industrial commercial lawnmower. It costs a lot of money. And then finally, a large increase is a new computer lab at the Griffin Memorial School, which currently doesn't have a computer lab. The other large increase we're expecting is in transportation. Currently in the budget right now, it's set at $45,000. We're guessing that increase is probably on the low side. The reason for that is currently Litchfield, we only have 10 buses, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense for a student to hold a bus fleet here for us. So what we basically do is piggyback off of Nashua, probably has hundreds and hundreds of buses, which actually gives us probably a better price than we normally would. Well, this year, next year, Nashua's transportation contract is up, as well as ours, and they decided to go out to bid. So First Student basically came to us and said, we can give you a new contract for next year, but it's going to be a 25% increase unless we get Nashua's business as well. So what they actually recommended was that we actually wait and see who Nashua decides to go with and then try and negotiate with them to get a better deal. Unfortunately, I think it came out last week that Nashua only received 2 bids for their transportation, and both of them were in an increase of 25%. So it's reasonable to expect that our transportation increases will be 25% above next year, which is probably another $35,000, $40,000 on top of this. So it's a good bet that we'll see that number closer to $70,000 or $80,000 next year. Major decreases in next year's budget. The largest single decrease is the bond on CHS. Next year's the last payment on the CHS bond, which means it's only, I believe, a half a payment. So right now, we're paying, I think, roughly $850,000 a year for our CHS bond. Next year, that payment's only going to be around, with principal and interest, closer to $360,000. And the year after that, it will be paid off completely. We won't have that payment. We're also seeing a decrease in handicap tuition of $200,000. A lot of that is just the way the ebbs and flows of student enrollment, as well as we've kept a lot of students in-house, which has saved us some money as well. And then finally, we have a teacher reduction in the second grade. Currently, our first grade class has been progressing from kindergarten to first grade, and next year into second grade is only 80 students. We currently have 5 teachers at each grade level at Griffin Memorial School, so it's safe to say that as that class kind of makes its way through, we'll probably have a reduction each year that happens. Next year will be the second one, because we cut a first grade teacher this past year. So as Frank pointed out, our overall budget is actually down $60,000, which is good. Unfortunately, as has been the pattern over the last couple of years, our budget has maintained pretty steady or even been down. However, our revenues from the state and the federal government have been coming down, which is obviously translated into tax increases. For next year, we're expecting, if you look at, that's not a very good slide. We'll go back. A decrease of state kindergarten aid of $86,000. What this basically means is, historically, kindergarten aid was broken out separately. Next year, what's going to end up happening is it just gets rolled into our normal education adequacy grant. And each of those kindergarten students are treated as half a student, I believe. So instead of getting the $3,750 per student, we would get whatever half of that is, $1,600 per student. But it's an overall decrease of $86,000. We're also getting a reduction in overall adequacy aid from the state of $117,000. The large reason for this is, A, our enrollments are declining, but they changed the way they calculate the average daily membership. It used to be almost a trailing figure. So this year would get an adequacy grant based upon our enrollments. It would have been 2 years ago, correct, right? Now they've set it up so that you're actually getting an adequacy grant based upon the immediate last year's enrollment. So we're seeing that decrease in aid come at a faster rate than we normally would have. As far as increases, we're projecting an increase in catastrophic aid and Medicaid distribution aid of around $80,000. And that's basically assistance from the state and federal government for helping with students with catastrophic needs. Skip that one. Moving on to the default budget. So as Mr. Regan had pointed out, if our operating budget fails, we'll default back to our default budget. That budget for next year would be $20,804,000, which is a difference of $186,000 to our current year budget, and next year it would be a difference of $130,000. So if the budget, if warrant article 1 passes, our budget will be $19,761,323. If it fails, it would be $19,631,083 for a difference of $130,000. As you pointed out earlier, the estimated tax impact for the operating budget itself, it would be an increase of 1.97%. And again, that's not because the budget's gone up. The budget's actually gone down. It's because we're seeing a decrease in revenues from the government. But the estimated tax impact would be 27 cents if the budget were to pass. Frank, do you know offhand what the increase is if it fails? Because it's still an increase because the revenues still go down. Okay, so even if the operating budget fails, there's still an increase of 24 cents because of loss in revenues. If it passes, the increase is 27 cents. And
further discussion on Article 1.
Rich LaSalle, 236 Charles Bancroft Highway. I'd like to amend the Article 1 and increase it by $1 to make the total $20,931,025.57.
Do we have a second? We have a second. We have a proposed amendment to increase the budget by $1. Can we discuss it? You can stand it up if you like, yeah. Well, that's what we're going to discuss in a second.
In the past, we've had a adult community education program here at Campbell High School. Up until, I believe it was 2 years ago, it had been running in the red because of an administrative fee that was included in that. Without the administrative fee, we feel that we'd like to revive that program. Without the administrative fee, we think we can, we'll be forced to come out even, so it's not an impact one way or the other on the budget. We want to have a dollar in the budget for that line item, which I believe is 1601. It's adult education, just so that we'll be able to spend money in that account.
Further discussion on the proposed amendment to Article 1. We have some discussion going on here. Further discussion on Article 1.
The question was, is this for senior mentor program? Senior, it would include anything outside the normal curriculum that would be aimed at the general citizenry within the town. Wouldn't prohibit, and this would be supported by fees and tuition for each course, and it wouldn't prohibit somebody from outside the town enrolling in these, but it would be aimed at people within the town. In the past, we've offered a variety of courses, including like exercise courses, cooking courses, computer courses, whatever.
Further discussion on Article 1 on the proposed amendment to add $1 to the bottom line, making it $20,931,025.57. Further discussion on the proposed amendment?
Mr. LaSalle, we might need you to modify your motion to just to specify the actual account number, because right now it's just going to go into the general fund of the bottom line. So if you wanted to make sure it actually goes into that, the adult education line.
All right, so formality has us, we have to decline this, and then you can resubmit a new amendment. Sorry.
Frank's looking up the number for you right now. What was that?
We have a motion on the table to change it to $1 without that change. Those in favor of making the motion to change the dollar amount, please say aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
The noes have it. Now you're going to submit a new. Give me 7 names in writing. No, I'm sorry, hold on a second. That was for a secret ballot. You don't want a secret ballot, do you? Okay, so let's say that again. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Noes have it. Just submit the article again. We'll do it again.
The dollar's coming back. He's just resubmitting
Yeah,
it in a
we're going
different
to be coming
format.
back. He's going to amend this again. And just put the account here.
He just has to specify the actual line it's going to go in the budget so that it gets funded correctly.
Okay, so the first amendment failed. The second amendment being proposed here, Mr. LaFasse, go offer your second amendment, please. Yeah, come on, man, this is just formality. Go ahead.
I hope the camera breaks. I'd like to amend Article 1 to be $20,931,025.57 by adding $1 to account 1601, the community and adult education line item.
Thank you. Further discussion? Hearing none. We have a proposed amendment to change the dollar amount to $20,931,025.57 and account 1601.
Hi.
Do you have discussion on this?
I do. I got a question.
Okay, we have a discussion on the proposed amendment to number 2.
Jason Grett, 11 Perry Court. Just wondering, Mr. LaSalle will probably be the one to answer it, but while I understand this used to be part of the budget, I'm just curious, it's a complete community structure. In other words, it's classes for the community, and it used to be that the administration of it came through the district, which is what he was referring to. Could this not still happen at a community level where then they use the school use form to have the school be the base for this thing, but it be outside of the school budget? In other words, just like any organization that wants to use our schools, they fill in the form, they can use the school as their base of operation, if you will, but it remains separate from the actual school budget.
Can you answer that, Mr. Sloss?
I understand what you're saying. I was just trying to bring back what we had before. I don't necessarily see a problem with what you're doing, but the administration, that would be up to them. But I don't see a problem with it.
I think it's technically easier for it to be run through the school just for, otherwise, normally we require a third-party company or organization using our school to provide proof of insurance and stuff like that. If it's run through the school but self-funded, they would fall under our insurance and stuff like that. So it would be less of a hassle for them if it ran through our budget. We wouldn't personally spend any money on it. They'd have to provide the funds for it, but it would just run through in order to get our insurance and stuff like that.
All right, thank you.
I think if I could, just for a moment, it's not, there's a certain amount of administration that has to take place, bookkeeping and so forth, that has to take place. I've talked with the superintendent, and they could support that. So if you didn't have the school supporting it, then you'd have to provide that in some way. And that could be, make it prohibitive.
Yeah.
All right, we have a consult going in. Go ahead.
In talking with Rich, the program that we had, and with Lori, the program that they have is a very successful program. And at the start, actually made money. A position was created to supervise the program, and the structure of the cost didn't differentiate between costs that met all of their obligations and those that didn't. And so over time, a lot of the same courses were run with not enough people, and funds were lost. There's some pretty simple fixes to that, where if the cost is more than the actual tuition, then you give the person the option of, you can get 80% of tuition, right, or it doesn't run. Those sorts of things have to be in place, otherwise you end up with exactly what we had, a very good program that over time runs the same program too often, class sizes get small, costs get larger than income, and the end result is the program doesn't exist anymore. So the basic attempt is to try and support this through the SAU office, to do whatever minimal work has to be done, and try and start small and build a self-sustaining program that supports the community, but does it in a way that costs the town and taxpayers literally no dollars.
Dr. Cochran, sorry, and so you would be doing this within the current structure of the SAU? Now, was there not?
I offer to volunteer my time, all of the extra time I have.
I got you. And maybe this was undone, but at some point I thought I was listening during the budget process that you were increasing hours within the SAU office to.
Nope,
was it not a position at the high school with hours extended? No.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Thanks.
Right. As long as we use salaried people, then there's no additional cost, even if the work gets done.
All right, we have some.
I'm sorry, Mr. LaSalle. We have to vote this one down again and have you resubmit the first one. Our legal representation has just advised us that you can change the bottom line, but you can't actually specify. Oh, you can?
We can add something like,
Well, you can't change the language,
well,
but
this,
you can raise the number by $1, but identify in the motion to an account.
without adding that reference to 1601 to the motion. So Rich, we're back to the original proposed amendment. Okay? So we're going to decline this, and we're going to re-amend it and go back to the original dollar.
Well, the original motion didn't identify where it was going, and you can amend that number up or down.
Right.
But the board would have been free to spend that dollar however they wanted to.
As they still are, because it's a bottom line
It's
budget.
well on the budget, but if in the motion you're identifying the account number,
Right.
the board can honor that.
So this is just formalities, Rich. Apologies. Okay, so we're going to not accept this amendment. You're going to resubmit it as an amendment, I'd like to propose an amendment to add $1 to the bottom line budget with all that referenced. And then we're going to vote on it. You can do it right there. Just add $1, and I'll add the number for you.
I'd like to amend the bottom line of Article 1 to be
$20,931,025.57. Second? Second. Discussion on the proposed amendment to add $1 to the bottom line budget. We have discussion.
all for $1, Bill?
It's going to cost us more to change this than the actual change.
If he doesn't have to identify where it's going, and if it's a bottom line number, why the heck are we adding $1? We don't have to do that.
I'd like to think the school board would honor the intent of it if it passed. But we wouldn't, legally we wouldn't have to, but I'd like to think that the 5 people sitting up here would honor
They
that.
can identify, but at the end of the day, the school board can still spend it however they like. Correct. Okay, the point is, we're accepting this because it was a proposed amendment by a resident. I can't not accept it.
No, I understand that. I'm making the point that if it isn't identified, and then there's no reason to add $1 to the bottom. I mean, I have no problem adding $1 to the bottom line, that's silly. But there's no reason to do it, because it's a bottom line budget. And if you want to do it, you can do it. I mean, it's ridiculous.
I think the point, you can talk to the gentleman right behind you. Yes, ma'am.
Laura Gandy at 3 Chamberlain Drive. I just wanted to comment, just because I think there may be some confusion.
Yeah.
I agree with legal counsel's representation that you can't add the 1601
Right.
to it. So now what in effect is going to happen, you're going to add, if the motion is approved, you're going to add $1 to the bottom line budget, but you're not going to say where that dollar is going
Correct.
to go. And then what's going to happen is, my understanding, the school board, at its own discretion, by a vote, will then vote whether or not to fund the that 1601 line. Is that
Right.
correct?
That's what I'm reading.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have some confusion. Phil Reed, Forest Lane.
Yep.
I have some confusion here because in my memories from my district past serving on the school board, if you didn't have $1 allocated in the budget to a particular line item, you were not able to spend anything on that line item, whether you found the dollars or not. So unless we identify where this is going, it appears to me we're not opening the door for them to reinstitute this, because we haven't allocated any money that I know of to a line item that would cover that. Now, maybe it is in there, but I haven't seen it.
What is the dollar amount on that line item right now? Is it 0? It is 0.
Well, then we got a problem.
This is their issue. This is not, legally, you can't change that. We can't change the wording. Done. promise you're making the voter. Yeah.
It's all set.
Your councilman is one way. I don't know, you want to wait for him?
Frank, do you think we need to wait?
I think for the purposes of the article, we have a plan.
Yeah, we can vote.
Well, we have a proposed plan. What happens afterwards is the school board's...
It would be a legal issue after this.
Right.
We think we can do it, but
Yeah.
we can't guarantee it, but.
But that's what I think the deal is with the bottom line budget like this. Yes, ma'am?
Hi, Carrie Douglas, 9 Pheasant Street. I think your plan is a great idea. I think it would be much simpler if we did a warrant article. You could identify where it goes. We could see how the community feels about it. You can't do a warrant article this year. Obviously, the filing deadline is passed. But would that not have been the proper way of handling it? That's what the warrant article process is for. And then whether it goes through the school or through the rec commission, I mean, I don't see why it couldn't be fall under recreational. It would be much simpler, less legal conflicts if we did the warrant process. Thank you.
Yep. It sounds it. We're waiting for a legal response. Anyone got any good jokes? No? And unfortunately, we can't proceed to the next article until this one's discussed.
I have a question I think the school board can answer.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily pertain to anything, and I'm not proposing anything.
Yep.
I'm wondering what has happened to the senior mentor program that we had in Campbell High School for years, where we had senior citizens would come in and do a mini course for kids who were in need of credits. They'd get half a credit for doing the mini course. And I was involved in this for 4 or 5 years, and then to my knowledge, the program suddenly died. And there was a cost involved with it, which frankly, as far as I know, most of the senior mentors didn't care whether they got paid or not. They just enjoyed doing it.
Right.
And I'm wondering what happened to that program.
Did you catch that?
Yeah, that was before my time though, I don't think. Does anyone
Anyone
remember
comment
senior
from the
mentor
board
program?
on what happened to those
Do you remember senior mentor program?
programs? They faded away. Okay, so we have legal counsel.
We're good to go.
We have a bottom line number. We can accept when we vote it in to make the change to increase to $1 with no further discussion. Then it's up to the board to make a decision on where to put those dollars with your proposal in mind. Okay? So, do we have further discussion on the proposed amendment to add $1 to the bottom line budget, bringing it to $20,931,025.57? We do.
Robin Corvio, 4 Nesmith Court. If for some reason we run into a legal blockade here for this, can a citizen just come to a school board meeting, make a donation of $1 to go to that line item? Could that happen?
God.
And would that be legal?
No. Because it has nothing in it right now, it technically doesn't exist and we can't spend money on it. But with this motion, we can take that dollar and then when we finalize the budget.
Not take that dollar, take the dollar in the,
Take the
from
dollar,
the
take the
dollar
dollar.
bottom line.
We can put it in that line item and spend money on it.
Okay.
Further discussion on the proposed amendment to add $1 to the bottom line. All in favor of, say what? Call the question. All in favor of adding $1 to the bottom line, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. The ayes have it. We now have an amended budget of $20,931,025.57. Further discussion on the amended Article 1. Gee, Dennis, what are you going to do? Well, you want to read it first. Read it first. Yes. Read the snapshot of what you want to change.
I propose to modify Article 1 and add $43,663 between the regular transportation line, $36,205, special education transportation line, $74,58, which would be a new bottom line of $20,974,688.57.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Super big print, too, thank you. Okay, so further discussion on the proposed amendment to change the bottom line to $20,974,688.57. Shoot.
As Mr. Barca indicated, we have a contract with First Student that's gives a favorable rate because of the contract they have with Nashua. The school board actually in the budget, after it was submitted to the budget committee, added 25% to account for the expected increase. That was reduced at the budget committee. This amount just brings that up to what we expect the cost increase to be, whether it's with First Student or a different vendor that we would negotiate with that has the Nashua contract.
Further discussion on the proposed amendment to Article 1. Yes, sir.
Jason Gurlow, Perry Court. He mentioned SPED transportation. I was wondering how much of that was allocated for SPED?
What's the breakdown, Dennis, again?
$7,458.
Of the 43?
I'm sorry, say it again, please, Dan.
$7,458.
So of 43663, 7458 was sped.
Yep.
What was the other breakdown?
36205 was regular.
Regular. Yeah.
Could the SPED portion come from the SPED account, reserve account? If that needed be? Just
Probably.
curious.
Could the special ed portion of it? Yes, if the school board decided to do that, we could do that.
All right, thanks.
So even if we pulled from the reserve, we can't go over the bottom line. So we would be 7,300 short in terms of the budget. It's just where the revenue would come from in that case.
Further discussion on the proposed amendment to Article 1. Yes, ma'am.
Laura Gandia, 3 Chamberlain Drive. I'm just trying to understand the process of what happened. The Budget Committee received the budget. They took out $43,000, and they submitted the budget back. The school board voted on that almost unanimously to accept the Budget Committee's recommendation. Now they are saying, no, they don't want to accept that, and they want to add in that $43,000.
No, not they, a citizen.
A citizen wants to add that back in.
Yes.
Okay.
That's how I get this.
John York, School Board. Actually, that's not how it occurred at all. Nashua put their contract out for bid. We're tied to the rates that they were getting. As we were going out and researching what our rates would be for our district, we were informed we could expect anywhere from a 15 to 25% increase. We gave those numbers to the Budget Committee and recommended they vote in the 25% increase, which would have been around $100,000. They elected to vote in the around, I think, the 10 or 15% increase, which is, I think, $40,000 or $43,000. It's now going to be somewhere around $85,000 to $90,000. So we're just adding in what we believe will be the number based on the 2 companies that we've had, SAU's had conversations with, that bid on the contract for Nashua.
Thank you. I was just trying to understand the process.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Scucci, 12 Colonial Drive. We had just had a school board member, as in his capacity as citizen, make a motion to add some money to the budget, and as it was just said, the school board did vote unanimously on the budget that's presented today. Could we hear from each school board member on how they, whether they agree or disagree with Mr. Miller as a citizen adding this money in, please?
I personally agree with him adding the money in, yes. Back when we voted on the school board budget unanimously, at that point, I don't think we had a solid feel. We knew it was going to be an increase, but we didn't know how much. I think with Nashua actually having bids in hand now that are 25% higher, it's a little bit clearer now that the increase is going to be closer to that 25% amount. So that's my personal opinion.
Just a note to Ms. Gandia. It can be construed if you vote against the operating budget that you're really voting for the default budget, which is why I think you might see some of that 4-0. Another piece from what Mr. York said, when we originally talked about the transportation budget, the school board wanted to have this number in there, which is what we sent to the budget committee, and we said if Nashua's contract comes back and it's 10%, then that's where we think we'll be. We'll try to reduce that at deliberative. We'll make a motion to bring that back down to the value that we believe we need to negotiate a contract with whoever gets the contract in Nashua to try to keep that arrangement going. That the budget committee voted the number they voted. That's what we have today. So I'm in favor of raising it. I believe we should budget what we think we're going to expend and then deal with it that way. But that's why I brought the motion from the floor, was that was what we had discussed at the school board meeting.
Further discussion on the proposed amendment to Article 1? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry.
It's all right, I wasn't sure if they were done or not.
Is the school board done?
Well, you
No,
can
we
finish
would-
this up.
Yeah.
No, as Dennis had just represented, that is what we presented to the Budget Committee. We did let them know that we would make changes either up or down based on the number that they had passed, so I would be, I would support this change.
Okay.
Brian Burke, and I agree that we need the money for the buses.
I was not at the particular meeting that we voted for of the warrant articles, and but originally when we first started talking about the busing and the unsurety of what the amount would be, I did not vote for to go the highest amount. So, and I would still kind of inclined to go that way.
Anyone else? There's no one else.
That was 5. At the high school, do we know what the bus ridership is? How many people ride the bus from the high school, of the 500 or so? I could have swore I heard at one time it was like 50 kids.
I don't think it's that low, but it's pretty low.
It's pretty low, right? One of my, mine is one of those, not because of anything other than it's convenient, but I certainly go by the school every morning. My point is do we have a number associated with what it costs to bus those 50 kids, just those 50?
Like on a per kid basis?
I don't think so.
Well, in other words, if it's 20,000, of the entire contract, how much is the high school portion of that?
It would be really hard to calculate that. I don't think we can. We pay, the way the contract works, we pay for a number of buses. We pay for 10 buses. And then on top of that, you obviously pay hourly rates and gas and stuff like that. So it would be a pretty difficult calculation to figure out exactly how much we pay for each student at the high school.
I understand, but it could be an avenue to look at. In other words, we're not required to bus high school students.
Legally, no.
Right, and if the ridership out of 500 or so kids is roughly 50 or so, and again, some of those are, a portion of them are just out of convenience. I'd rather pay the $100, but I could drop them off every day. The point is that's, I know we're looking to add.
The students do already pay, I think, a $100 fee to ride the bus.
That's what I'm saying, is I pay $100 anyway to ride the bus, so I'm kind of getting a double whammy here. I'm paying $100, and then I'm going to pay some more on top of that for the entire bus load. But the point I'm making is, it might be an interesting math problem for you guys to work out to see what those numbers actually are, because we're asking for an increase in bus services, and I understand that. But if we're not really needing them for the high school kids, there's a portion there we may aggregate.
Mr. York would like to point out we're not asking for more services. This is just to cover the current services we have. If we didn't get the funding, we'd have to figure out something to do.
Sir.
Just a clarification. Is this money that you're requesting already included in your default number?
No, it's not.
So both numbers would go up?
No, because we can't increase the default because we don't have a contract in hand. This is really speculation. No, it's not speculation. It's informed estimate is what it is, but it's not a contract, so we can't include it in the default.
Okay, so if it gets added in, it increases the spread between the default and the operating budget?
It does, yes.
Deadly.
Possibly.
Yes, sir.
Andy Sanum, former Queston Circle. So I heard that we're not required to bus the high school students, but we are required to bus the high school athletes going to away games, right? Does that contract cover that?
Yeah, it's included in the contract.
Thanks.
Further discussion on the proposed amendment to increase Articles 1's bottom line? Yes, sir.
Just to follow up to Mr. Goretz's question, the ridership at the high school level is significantly lower than the other two schools. The difficulty is the projected savings, and I did mention to the Budget Committee that we could potentially, if we get hit with the 25% that we were anticipating, we could accrue some savings. How much, we don't know. The problem is if we have a certain number of buses, we're allocated a fee by those buses. The cost of the bus, the cost of the driver, the cost of the gas, and the infrastructure, both personnel and other to support it, are the major costs. If we need X number of buses for the elementary run and the same number for the middle school run, and we need fewer for the high school, it's still the same number of buses, it's still, so it's a few hours a day of some drivers' salary that would go down, and it would be the resulting gas from one less run at the high school. And there would be some savings that we could accrue. They would be pretty minimal, but there are some things that we can do to try and lower that amount, but it's really not substantial, just based on the structure of the contract and the structure of the services that have to be delivered. Does that make sense? Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
There's really two issues here.
Chris Pascucci.
Chris Pascucci, I'm sorry, 12th Colonial. One issue is the cost really going up to 25%, and it may. We don't know. As you said, it's hypothetical. It's an informal non-contract now. And
Informed guess.
And Dr. Cochran said, he goes, there could be other ways, possibly, that we could find the money. But the other issue is, right now, the spread between the proposed budget and the default is $130,000. We know some people do vote on the spread, and they'll vote yea or nay, depending upon what the total cost is. And then there's a balance, and then there's a high side. So I'd like everybody just to keep in mind, there's two separate issues to think about before you add another $40,000 or $40-something thousand to the budget. Will that indeed be a breaking point for certain people to vote no, and then you'll wind up with the default? We should not, as a community, make our decisions based upon that. We need to do what's right, but there are two separate issues that have to be thought about. While there's a handful of people in this room, but a lot more go into the ballot.
Further discussion on the proposed amendment to Article 1? Hearing none. We have an amendment proposed to change the bottom line to $20,974,688.57, increasing by $43,663. All in favor of changing the bottom line budget as noted, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, raise your hand. The ayes have it. We now have an amended Article 1 for $20,974,688.57. Further discussion on the amended Article 1? Hearing none, you'll see it on the ballot as amended. Article 2. To see if the Litchfield School District will vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Litchfield School District and the Litchfield Education Association, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing level: year 2014-2015, estimated increase of $213,383. For year 2015-2016, estimated increase of $195,737. In year 2016-2017, estimated increase of $175,545. And further to raise and appropriate the sum of $213,383 for fiscal year 2015. Such sum represented the additional cost attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels. The estimated tax impact is 26 cents. This is recommended by the school board by a vote of 4 to 1. This is not recommended by the school committee, by the budget committee, because of a tied vote, 4 to 4 to 0. Mr. Derek Barker.
So in negotiating the new contract with the Litchfield Education Association, the school board had a number of objectives. Our first objective was to reduce the health insurance cost of the district. If you remember back to the first slide deck we did with the larger increases we had over the course of the year, if you recall, our single largest increase to the budget each year is the increase of healthcare costs. One of the things we're probably most afraid of is in the coming years as Obamacare or PPAC, what's it really called? PPACA actually rolls out. It's only going to take 2 more years of 8% increases in the current healthcare cost for the current health plan to be considered a Cadillac plan, and that's going to result in an additional 40% tax to the district. So the costs are just going to grow astronomically. So our number one objective as part of this contract was to reduce healthcare costs. If you look at this is basically our historic healthcare costs, and as you can see that they're going up quickly. The red line is our existing healthcare up until this year. The last 3 years are obviously projected based upon the current rate that we've seen over the last 5 years, which is 8.4%, I believe. The blue line is the projected increases of the new healthcare plan that we've negotiated with the teachers union. The first year costs in 2014 are obviously known quantities. They're bids that we have for next year, with the difference being roughly $210,000 as of next year. However, if you look at those, the new lower base rate compared to the existing higher rate, and then you look at the trends that they've been growing on over the last 5 years, you can see as time goes on, our savings is going to start to increase year over year. Whereas by the time we get to the third year, you're going to see probably savings of closer to $300,000 or $400,000. Now, obviously, these are projections. We can't account for this in our calculations, but if you look at history, that's likely what's going to happen. One of our second objectives was to maintain competitive salaries in order to recruit and retain high-quality teachers, obviously. If you look at our current contract situation, our teachers have not had a contract out of the last the 2 preceding years, and they haven't had a contract out of 3 of the last 5 years. So if you go back down to 2009 when they didn't have a contract, since then they've received 2-step movements and a 1% increase. So what that basically means is all of our most experienced teachers, the teachers in the top step, have only received a 1% increase in the last 5 years. This slide, honestly, I went back and forth whether or not to include it, but I don't want to be misconstrued of what I'm saying with this slide, but it's kind of eye-opening. What this basically is our existing salary schedule, and if you look at the pink and the yellow shading across the bottom, what that represents is the salary where a family of 3 or 4 qualifies for free and reduced lunch. So that whole bottom swath of yellow and red are all the teachers in our district that qualify for free and reduced lunch if they're single-family incomes. Again, as part of this contract, the school board's point wasn't to say, oh, the poor teacher, we need to give more money, but looking back at this particular graph, it's eye-opening. These are professionals that are certified as highly qualified teachers in the state. They have 4-year degrees. In some cases, they have master's degrees and doctorates, and some of them qualify for free and reduced lunch. If you actually look at our historical wages over the last 5 years, they've actually gone down considerably. If you go back to 2008, the gross salaries were costing us close to $7.2 million a year. Over the last 5 years, it's come down almost $1 million. There's a couple of reasons for this. We've had a decrease in enrollment, so the number of positions have gone down. We've had turnover, so we've had less expensive teachers come in. But even if the last 3 bar graphs are basically if the contract passes, where it's going to go back to. So if the contract passes, even with the raises in there, at the end of the 3 years, we're actually still spending less money on salaries than we were 5 years ago. And if you think back to the slide we had a little while ago with the healthcare costs increasing kind of exponentially, it's been I think the belief of the school board is that we want to stop giving all that money to the health insurance companies and start giving it to the teachers. And what this contract is going to allow us to do is kind of flip that paradigm. The teachers' salaries are going to start going back up again, and the healthcare costs are going to start going down. But overall costs should kind of, I mean, they're going to go up obviously, but they'll maintain a steadier rate. And with salaries, it's much easier to budget. Where with health insurance rates, we're kind of at the whim of the healthcare companies. If they want to increase to 9%, we kind of have to pay that. With salaries, we have much more control, and it's more predictable. Our third objective was to make quality of teaching a primary factor impacting future reductions in force. What that basically means is, I mean, you've all heard about teachers' contracts and any union contract. A lot of the time, there's stipulations in there where the first 5 years of a teacher's career, they're in a probationary period, and that's actually state law. They are in a probationary period. And most contracts actually have a stipulation in them where if you have to have a layoff due to reductions or a decrease in enrollment, that those probationary teachers go first. It's the feeling of the school board that if we have a 4-year teacher who's outstanding, there's no reason we should automatically let go of that teacher and keep a teacher that's been around longer that isn't as qualified. Fortunately, the Litchfield Education Association agreed with us, and in the new contract, removed probationary as the automatic disqualifier for retaining teachers. Our fourth objective was to it wasn't necessarily, I meant to change the slide, but I apparently didn't make it. It wasn't to reduce the cost of teacher sick time. It was to, that's one of our objectives. But the main objective was to keep teachers in front of the students as much as possible. So there's 2 main drivers to that. The first was a change in language to what we call our 6 periods. Right now, the teachers at the high school teach, it's 4 classes per day, the way it works, and they teach 5 of those 8 classes over a 2-day period. That 6th period is what they call a supervisory period. A lot of the time now, they're supervising studies and stuff like that. The new language in the contract will allow us to put the teachers in front of students for tutoring, for covering labs and things like that, and keep in front of the students a little bit more. As far as the sick time goes, again, with this contract, we're reducing the sick time from 15 days a year to 12 days a year, which would in theory put the teachers in front of the students a little bit longer. But the side effect of that also is that we're going to see potential savings due to fewer sick days used each year, and then our liability goes down, because right now teachers can retain those sick days up to a maximum of 125. So every year that it occurs, we have this liability sitting out there of all this time that we owe these teachers, and by decreasing the amount they accrue each year, and then for new teachers, they can only accrue to a maximum of 110 days. It's going to decrease that liability and cut down costs in the future. So before we jump into what the contract looks like, when I find myself out there talking to the community, a lot of people don't understand what salary schedules are or how teachers get paid. So the first thing I want to kind of do is kind of explain that, and then jump into what the new contract does. So for those that don't know, most teachers and most union staff across the country are paid on what they call salary schedules. And what that is basically you have step movements for every year that you're at a location, and then usually there's a ladder or a grade level. So for example, for our contracts, we have six ladders or grade levels that range from bachelor's on the left-hand side all the way up to master's plus 30 credits. And what happens is, based upon your educational experience, you're placed in a ladder level, and then each year you would in theory move up a step when there is a contract. With our contracts previously, when there is no contract, there is no step movement. So for the last 2 years when we've had no contract, the teachers have been frozen where they are. So for example, we have teachers that joined us in maybe 2008, 2009 that have 6 years of experience, but they're actually only on step 2 still, because they've only had 2 steps in those 3 years. So this is our actual current schedule. I'm not sure if you can see it that well, but what it basically does is for a teacher starting with a bachelor's degree in the first year, they start at the salary of $33,000, and then each year the step movement is fixed. It's not a percentage increase, it's a fixed movement of $1,446. If you go to the whole other side of the schedule, a teacher starting with a master's degree and 30 extra credits, we start at $39,000, and each year their step movement is $1,700. And every year there's a contract, they move up one step. In the proposed contract, in the first year, what we're going to do is we're actually going to modify that schedule. So rather than just give every teacher a step up, we're actually going to take the schedule itself and move it down. So that first row you saw there that started at $33,000 went to $39,000. We're going to remove it completely. So now the new starting salary for a teacher is going to be what was considered the old step 2. And then what we're going to do is actually give all the teachers on the schedule their actual steps. So what ended up happening, for all intensive purposes, they get the equivalent of 2-step raises, but they actually only move one step on the schedule. So this is what the new schedule is going to end up looking like. If you look at the graph, as I mentioned, that first line goes away. So the new starting salary for a teacher with a bachelor's degree is now $35,000, and now they max out at $55,320 instead of $53,000. So hopefully that makes sense. What we're going to do in step 2 is the schedule stays the same, but each teacher moves up there one step as they normally would. For the top step, they have nowhere to go, so they're kind of stuck there. So what we're doing for them is giving them, we're moving that top step a half a step increase, and then giving them $300 on top of that. Keep that in mind, because in the third year, what we're going to do is give them that second half of that step. So what's going to happen here is that in 2015-16, the schedule for the most part looks the same, except there's that new top 15 step, which is a half a step higher, plus $200 than it was the previous year. Everyone else on the step schedule just moves their next step. So if they were on step 7 in the previous year at $43,750, they moved to step 8 at $45,195 for the fixed increase of $1,446. So what we're doing in year 3 is modifying the schedule again. Teachers won't move a step, but instead the schedule will move underneath them again. So we're going to, again, remove that bottom step and then create that new top step, except that new top step isn't that whole jump. It's the second half of that first year. So what's going to happen is that for the teachers on that top step, over years 2 and 3, they get 1-step raise. They don't get 2-step raises like this teachers on the top step. So this is the final schedule after the 3-year contract. What happens here is after the 3 years, our new starting salary would be $36,517 for new teachers, with it topping out at $57,366 for the bachelor's degree. Interestingly enough, if you look at the comparisons for all of districts around us and districts similar to our size, these starting and ending salaries are the average today. So with this contract, where right now our teachers are about $2,000 or $3,000 on average behind their counterparts in neighboring districts and other districts of the same size, what's going to happen with this contract is it's going to bring us to the average today. So if all the other towns are still moving, they'll still be roughly behind average, but we're getting them much closer to where we think they should be. In summary, for all the teachers on the schedule, and what that means is they're not at the top step, they're somewhere in the schedule, they'll get 4-step movements in 3 years. For teachers at the 14th step, they'll actually get 13 steps because they're getting their step each year. For teachers at the top, the total amount of increase they're going to get is 2 steps plus that $600. These are the official contract cost. When we price this out, all we can really do is price out next year because, I mean, we can't predict the future. We don't know what the healthcare increases are going to go. So in the first year, the fixed salary increases are, where is it? $421,049. It's the third line from the bottom, the total increase. And that's because they're getting that 2-step movement in that first year. In the second year, the total salary increases are $212,000, and in the third year, the total increase is $192,000. If you look at the line below that, you'll see that the healthcare savings that first year is $208,000. If you go to years 2 and 3, you'll see the healthcare savings is only marked as $17,000 each year. The reason for that is because each year of the new contract, the teachers have to increase, the teachers on the more expensive HMO have to increase their premiums by 1%. So that $17,000 is that 1% savings, additional savings we're going to see each year. But again, these are the fixed costs. If you look at it from a projected cost analysis, we're looking at saving, again, the $208,000 the first year. That's the second line. But then we can also factor in, this is, so for cost purposes, we can only really factor in the LEA teachers' health savings because the non-LEA members are actually on a different, they're on the same plan, but they're not on the contract. In all reality, though, we're not going to move just half the staff to a new healthcare plan. So we're going to realize savings when we move the rest of the staff to the same healthcare plan. So those additional savings the first year, another $68,000, for a total of savings of $276,000, which means the real cost of the contract in that first year is really only $145,000. If you look at projections using that same graph I used the first time, if you look at our current healthcare plan, which historically has grown at 8.4% every year, and you look at the new healthcare plan that starts at a much lower rate and grows at only 4.2% historically, it's reasonable to assume that we're going to see savings in 2015-16 of $98,000 and in 16-17 $106,000. So what you're going to see in the warrant article is this number of $584,000, which are the most conservative numbers we can use because we can't predict anything. This also assumes that every single teacher is going to move to the most expensive healthcare plan, which obviously isn't going to happen. They're not all going to go with HMO. Most of them are probably going to stay on the, right now I think it's a 50-50 split, Frank? Or maybe, actually, Tracy, do you know the breakdown of, okay, but it's not all, slightly higher. So there's slightly more teachers on the more expensive plan now. If that same percentage moves forward, the healthcare savings would be even bigger. And with that, I'm going to let Dr. Cochran come up and speak to the contract as well.
Just a few words. First, effective teaching is what schools and school districts are about. Everything else that we do, whether it's build buildings or keep them clean or bus kids back and forth or have administration, only benefits students to the extent to which it supports quality teaching, period. And these two groups, in different ways, do their very best to try and make sure that we keep our eye on that goal, quality teaching for all of our students. And the discussion sometimes differs in how we go about that, but having been here for 2 years and having gone through 2 budgets, I can assure you that every person on this stage has a primary objective of quality teaching and learning in every classroom. And for the last 2 years, the school board's stated goals in the negotiation process has all been about that. How do we reallocate resources to maintain and improve quality of instruction? Because we have more than our fair share of quality teachers, I can assure you. So as you go through this and you look at the budget, what you can see is that actual teacher salaries have not been the driver of budget increases and tax increases, right? Salary has been flat for about 5 years. In fact, the 1 year the teachers got a 1% raise, their contributions to the retirement system went up 2%. We've also in a situation where by board decision, when there's no contract, teachers have not got steps. Now that doesn't happen in a lot of districts. Teachers often still get steps. The other thing that happens when you're not in a raise, or not in a contract, is that the existing contract maintains in status, including the healthcare provisions. You can see that we've, if you've been following the budget for the last 2 years, there have been 2 major drivers. Positions that have needed to be filled as required by IEPs. And I think we're actually in a pretty good place now in terms of our staffing levels for that, and hoping that as a driver of any increases is going to be actually very minimal. The other thing has been healthcare. By RSA, the district is locked into the existing healthcare plan until we contractually agree on a different plan. Until that happens, that healthcare trajectory is only going to get worse. Negotiations is an imperfect and sometimes very illogical process, but each side has levers. For the LEA, one of the levers that they absolutely have is the fact that healthcare is rising at a disproportionate rate, and that is going to continue. Moving to a lower trajectory, still high quality, but lower trajectory healthcare costs, primarily based on the fact that higher copays, higher deductibles, and incentives to use the services more wisely, right? Everybody's headed in that direction, but that is one of the things that they bring to the table. That's one of the things that they've been willing to negotiate away for exactly the reasons that that Derek mentioned. In essence, we're taking the money, instead of putting it in the healthcare pocket, $200,000+ a year go into teacher salaries. Those estimates of savings, by the way, are relatively conservative. The actual, if everybody stayed on this comparable plans, the savings would be closer to $250,000 a year. But in order to be conservative and protect the budget, we have to anticipate that some people might change their coverages. And so those are our projections based on what we believe realistically will happen. The other thing is that when someone is teaching in a district and there are no steps, let's say the average step increase is about $1,500, is slightly above that in this salary structure. We have teachers who are 4 steps below their actual years of experience. So think about that. In the first year, they're paid $1,500 less than they would otherwise be in the step. The second year that happens, they lose another step. So they lost $1,500 for the first lost step. The next year that happens, they're losing $3,000 from what their pay should be. That's a total cumulative of $4,500. The third time that happens, that year they're $4,500 behind what they could be, plus the $3,000 plus the $1,500. And when that happens over a spread time, then that aggregated total accumulates. The least amount that it would cost a person in terms of steps would be if they happened 4 years back to back, and it hasn't. 4 years back to back would be a loss of $1,500 plus $3,000 plus $45,000 plus $6,000. Do the math. We have a lot of quality teachers who would make an $8,000 to $10,000 or more raise, either if they went to some other district that actually put them on the salary scale, or if they left us and we rehired them a year later. I know, I have 2 teachers in my family, 2 daughters. We've done the math. Salary structure in other districts are very similar. One daughter got a $9,000 raise, the other one, if she moves. I mean, there are some other districts that are, whose salary structures are similar to ours, and I can assure you they're having the same concerns. Will we keep our best teachers? This step structure is the industry standard. Right? It's pretty much 99+% of districts across the country, in fact, across the world. There's been very little change, and it is what it is. A teacher comes in, and by and large, the people that I have enjoyed working with and had the privilege to learn from are the folks who get in this business to make a difference. We pay, as Derek pointed out, successful people with an undergraduate degree. We recruit them to come here, we tell them what the salary scale is, and we want them to be at the top of that scale because that means they've met our standards, they participate in our PD, they help write curriculum, they help develop programs, and we should see people at the top of the salary scale. If people are consistently held back through lack of steps, through wages that are less than comparable towns, then we lose the ability to recruit and retain happy, successful people. Think of the other things that have been given up. Sick time, which means a commitment to more time in front of kids, lower severance payments at the end of the contract for when a teacher leaves or retires, and the almost unanimous clause that non-continuing teachers will be RIF'd first before continuing contract teachers. That to me is a huge commitment as a body of professionals to the quality of work and the standard to which they are willing to be held. So we do have a group of people who, as a collective group, agreed to accept that standard. To me, that says a lot about them as professionals. This is a key time. Next year would be the 3rd year without a contract, and the math starts to add up, and a lot of good people will be forced to start looking about going elsewhere. Because if you think of that career ladder and the trajectory, we pay people in the low 30s coming out with a university degree. Over time, they get a master's degree, they get steps, and they move up to be able to have a quality of life. Because having been a teacher, and I still consider myself a teacher, it's that quality of life and the ability to make a difference is what teachers value. They know they're never going to make huge amounts of money, but they can do the thing that's important to them, and that's to make a difference. And this contract will help that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cochran.
So you've heard kind of from the school board, you've heard from the administration. At this point, I'd like to invite Carolyn Late, the president of the Litchfield Education Association, down to kind of talk about what the teacher's point of view was when entering this contract.
Good morning. My name is Carolyn Late, president of the Litchfield Education Association, and thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to speak this morning. As you've heard Dr. Cochran and Mr. Barker speak, and Mr. LaSalle, please excuse my back. I realize you're behind me. Well, I haven't seen him in a while, so it's nice to see Rich as we go through. But we kind of wanted to go through and explain a little bit of our objectives as we move forward and as we work here in your community. I think the first thing you have to realize is that when we sat down to negotiate the contract, we were looking for a contract for the future and how it would impact the town of Litchfield in the future. We weren't looking for a contract for the here and now, because the children are always going to be here. They are the future. We're looking towards the future. I think the second thing that you have to realize about your teachers is that we're always, our feeling is that your children deserve to have highly qualified, highly dedicated, highly caring teachers in front of your students each and every day. Those are two of our biggest goals. As we move forward into the contract and proposals were passed around, salary is always the big piece. And we were looking at what our salary structure was compared to the state and where we are in the state. And one of the things that we realized is that we wanted to increase our starting salaries because we really truly want to attract good, highly qualified, young, innovative, creative new teachers. And by increasing the starting salary, we can do that. The other objective we had was to maintain some of these incredible teachers that you have working in Litchfield. The association put together a flyer and was handing it out, and I know there are plenty of copies out in the lobby of some of our awards that our teachers have received. Teacher of the Year, our Teacher of the Year, and some of the things that we do. So part of our goal was to maintain and keep these highly qualified, experienced teachers in your classroom. The combination of these new, young, innovative teachers with these older, experienced, innovative, creative teachers, the young and the old together work really well. The experience, the new perspective, as they say. There's all these new trends in education, I'm sure you know. So it was a combination of how do we get the best of everybody and get them in front of your children. And that is a big, big piece to us. The health insurance, you've heard them speak about quite a bit. That was important to us. We wanted to maintain a good quality health insurance, but we understood that we needed to look at cost savings for the community. So we think we've reached that kind of a compromise. I think both sides, both the board and the association, would agree that this is a well-negotiated contract. You know, what it does for you is we gave up some sick days, we're changing our health, and in return we're getting competitive salaries. So I would have to say the process was long. It was interesting, I'll use that for a word at moments, but I think it's a well-negotiated contract. I look forward to working with Mr. Barker and the district and helping to explain and work in smaller groups, PTO groups, community groups, and helping to explain the process and explain more of the contract if need be. So I just want to say thank you, and I'd be happy to help Mr. Barker answer any questions that may come forward.
Thank you very much. In closing, I just wanted to kind of point out one thing. As a school board and a community, we've been stressing rigor and increasing the rigor in math, especially improving test scores and making sure we're getting with the best education possible. We've invested a lot of money, obviously, in things like this building, in new technology, and in new curriculums. But at this point, it's time to really kind of invest the money in the teachers, in the professionals that are actually in the classroom with our students, making the biggest difference. So, thank you.
Discussion on Article 2. Mr. Reed.
I'd just like to make a comment that this past several minutes of discussion is what makes me hate Senate Bill 2. Because people are going to come and vote on this article and see only the dollars associated on the article. And they're not going to see, because they weren't here and they didn't hear and they won't bother to get informed, that That's really not what this teacher's contract costs us. That there's a whole lot of other things in the article, the health savings and a lot of other things that the teachers did that they're not going to know about. And those of us that are good citizens and came here to hear the arguments will make an informed vote. Whether we vote up or down, we'll at least vote based on being informed. Under the non-Senate Bill 2, unfortunately, a huge number of people are going to vote totally uninformed.
Further discussion on Article 2.
Christina Lepore, 17 Greenwich Road. I'd just like to voice something for Litchfield voters to consider. I went through 12 years in the Litchfield School District. I'm a recent Campbell High School graduate, and I'm currently a first year at Wellesley College, which I can tell you is a very academically rigorous place. The community is very competitive, and I have to say I'm very indebted to all the faculty, all the teachers that I've encountered throughout my experience as a student in Litchfield. Not only have they instilled in me a love of learning, but also a good work ethic. For one example, one of Campbell High School's biology teachers, the only biology teacher, Mr. Orban, I was in his biology class before AP was offered, and since then I've been in a college biology course, and my professor thought I had taken AP and should be put in a higher level. So that's just something to attest to, and that's just a fairly basic biology course he taught. I believe teachers absolutely deserve the recognition and appreciation that they are providing an invaluable gift to the community every day, and I think it's time that we show our support, and absolutely, that's all. Thank you.
Thanks.
Jason Gard, 11 Perry Court. It's funny, I respect Mr. Reed. Every time we come here, he's here and he's always involved, and I always enjoy what he says. Typically, politically, I'm not always on the same end as him, but what's funny is he echoed a lot of what I was going to say. So I look around the room and I say, it's going to happen right here. When I look around the room here, right, so you see people that are involved either on a board or are employees, right, or there's a handful of people here that are really not involved. The problem is not selling it to these people. There may be a handful watching at home, but the average person out there is not going to hear any of this. So regardless of what we say in this room, you have the support of this room. How do you then get the support of the voter? And when you look at the trends and you look at the past, you come to the voter with all these additional costs, and that is what they see. So if you want to fix the problem, you want to fix, and we got to identify the problem. The problem is we don't have a passed contract. If you want to pass a contract, you got to provide a product that they're able to support. It doesn't matter if they understand it or don't understand it. The law says they have to vote on it. So just like buggy whips went out of style, right? Maybe we need to, they did, Derek. The point is we're providing a product that the consumer isn't buying. So we can continue to talk ourselves into this, yeah, we should vote for this. The problem is, I'm not convinced that we're providing the community with a product that they can support. And the evidence for that is where we are. We haven't approved a contract in this town. How many years out of how many, Derek? I mean,
3 out of the last 5.
3 out of the last 5, right? And that one was because it's a 2-year contract. And I believe there was very little increase in that contract. There was small.
Just steps in 1%.
Right. It was a very small number. So it doesn't matter if we agree or not agree. For the product, the problem is we're not providing a product. And I'm going to give you an example of what I think is the problem and what people feel out in town. What is the difference between the proposed and current health care plans, deductibles, and copays? What are they and what will they be?
I don't know offhand.
But that's an important question because
is,
everybody feels out in town, and I hear it all the time, yeah, it's going to save us money, but it's still nowhere near what I'm paying. This year will be the first year that I get a raise in 10, right? That wasn't a job move because that's just the way it is, that's just the way it is, right? But that's what people are feeling out in town. Doesn't, you know, we don't have to, it's not an argument, it's just what it is, right? So how do we fix it? So how does a person out in town feel about a health care plan that provides savings that, quite honestly, they're pissed off at? Because, heck, they're already getting, you know, I don't know, $5, $10, $15 co-pays, right? I know the town was $5.
I think it's 10, 20, yeah, can't really find out.
Jason, are you talking currently?
Yes.
Currently, it is 10, 20, 45. It's moving to 10, 30, 65.
Right. And again, I'm not here to argue that. I'm just saying is how people feel in town. I'm trying to help solve a problem here, right? So when you got to bring them a product that they can deal with, and I don't know if that's, you've convinced everybody here, but that's not the problem now, is it?
Yes, ma'am.
Robin Corbeil, 4 Nesmith Court. I would just like to correct, people in town do not feel that way. Some people in town may feel that way. When you characterize that everybody feels that way, and that every person in town sits back and says, well, they don't have the same copay that we have. That's not true. People in town recognize that teachers also don't get Christmas bonuses. They don't get, if you do an amazing job as a teacher, you don't get a bonus for that the way that people in the private sector do. And people in this community realize that teachers are paid differently than people in a private sector are. And that there are gives and takes in that, and we go into teaching knowing that. We marry teachers knowing that. We employ teachers knowing that their salary schedules and the way that they get paid are different than the private sector. And this town is made up of people who truly understand that. And I think if they understand that there are health care savings, that there is money that we are literally in some ways throwing away in a health care cost that can go to teachers, that they would support that. So getting that information out is important. Thank you.
Sir.
Mike Caprillo, 12 Brandy Circle. Knowing the cost savings of the health plan, how come the budget committee does not back this teacher contract? And I'd like to hear from whoever voted against it, why they're against the contract.
Correct. There is savings in the some savings in the growth of the health policy. The reason why I voted to not recommend it this year was because of the overall cost to the taxpayers. Now, to be clear, the Budget Committee has absolutely no say in the negotiations in anything other than asking questions as to what's in it. There are obviously good things and not so good things in this warrant. I don't disagree that teachers deserve a raise. We do have very valuable teachers. We do have excellent teachers in this community. And teachers, as well as any excellent or good employee, deserves a raise. But as a Budget Committee member, my role, I believe, is to balance and look at all aspects of this as put in front of me. Last year, I did vote to recommend the teacher's contract. And that also played in my decision this year. Last year, the total cost of the contract was about $250,000 or $70,000. This year, it's almost $600,000. Last year, the voters said no to that. That also played a little bit in my decision. We got this very late also, so I had to think about and set criteria, knowing that I wasn't going to have much time to review it, although I did have a lot of time to review it after the initial meeting. And some of the criteria I thought about, I said I would recommend it if it was the same amount as last year's contract, or maybe a term of 2 years instead of 3 years. The town presented a police contract that was 2 years, which I voted to recommend. Given what's going on in the economy, Obamacare, or the official term for it, there's a lot going on now. So I would have thought if it was a 2-year contract, that would have played, and I probably would have voted to recommend it. But I had to weigh what I thought was good, what I thought wasn't so good, and then I also had to think about the taxpayers, the people able to afford it. And along the same lines of this, it seems like it doesn't pertain, but it does. Article 1, which I did vote to recommend, does cost a lot more money. It was $130,000 over last year. Now it's $180,000 over last year. But there's a reason being I did that. Working with Dr. Cochran was excellent this year, because he came to us with all of this, all of these budgets with, as he said, some reallocation of funds, and he made it very reasonable, and he set priorities. It wasn't just about more. So that's why I think the Budget Committee also recommended unanimously on the school budget, because there are things in there we need to do to help educate the children and to keep the schools operating and safe. So having said that, there's only so much money out there, and I just thought there was too much in this teacher's contract. I would have preferred to see a little bit less money and a little bit shorter term, more like last year, and that is why I voted to not recommend it.
The Budget Committee got the contract proposal at its last Budget Committee meeting before the budget hearing. We got, I believe, a one-page summary of the contract. We had a little bit of discussion about it as best we could, asked some questions as best we could, and then we voted on it. The vote was 4 for, 1 against, and 3 abstentions. So when we went to the budget hearing, basically, the Budget Committee was recommending this contract by 4 votes. Between that meeting when we took the first vote and the budget hearing, I asked a couple of questions as best I could from the information I had about the salary impact and some of the health care costs, and I got answers back to those. The Budget Committee met after the budget hearing. Mr. York asked that the 3 members that abstained from voting on it take a position. Based upon the information I had, my position was no, because I didn't know enough about the contract to make an intelligent vote on it. That's why I abstained in the first place. We just saw a 20-page presentation on the contract. That presentation would have been very nice when they came to the Budget Committee so that we could ask some intelligent questions about it. The bottom line is, if we had left it the way it was, you would have had a recommendation. Mr. York insisted we vote, so you got a no recommendation, and that's the way it came out.
I was in the same position as Bill. I abstained the first time because we got handed the contract, and for most items that come before the Budget Committee, most of us like to take a little thoughtful time in them, and as a general rule, we get it the week before, we vote on it the next week, gives us some time to often talk with community folks or do some research or, you know, get more information from the school board or the town as we approach those things. I voted no. The movements in the steps and the percent increases, I thought as a Budget Committee member, our job is to deliver a budget to the town that we think you can afford. I thought it was too much in 1 year. I think the healthcare savings are totally nebulous. I don't think they can be documented in any way, shape, or form at this point. I would have loved if they would have brought a contract forward that took care of the healthcare, and then maybe, you know, for 1 year, after the savings were proven, the next year you could move forward with the salary increases, and we could be pretty much sure. Otherwise, you're looking at $1 million increase. We have some outliers in all of this. One of them is Cadillac healthcare provision, Obamacare, that kicks in 2018. That's a 40% tax on healthcare that's provided by somebody like the school district. We haven't had any discussions to wrap around that. I know that there's a lot of things that are loosely coupled in Obamacare that are going to impact us, but I think as we move forward improving things for 1, 2, or 3 years out, that we need to keep all those things in mind. My no vote was basically, I just thought it was more than the town could afford at this point with all the other things we have on our plate. I would like to see something a little bit less that was more in our affordable range.
John York School Board and Budget Committee rep. I just listened to the three members that voted no, and I think they're misrepresenting what occurred. The process and the time frame is correct. The school board administration was prepared to answer every question from those members of the Budget Committee. They made a vote on the 16th. They had until the 20th or 22nd or 28th of January to revote. We could have given them any information they wanted. They said they had questions. They didn't ask them. Okay? The school board felt that you, the voters, needed to have the Budget Committee, because they're elected officials, on record of voting rather than abstaining, because they needed to do their work. There are other towns in New Hampshire that had contracts passed in which budget committees held special meetings specifically on the contract to ask the questions so that they could make a vote. This budget committee elected not to. They also elected not to ask the questions, because we would have provided them all the information you saw up there was available to them if they asked for it. We met with them, the superintendent, the business manager, school board rep. We were all there available to answer any questions they have. So the reason they voted no, they can say is because their questions weren't answered. I don't believe that was true.
Just in rebuttal to Mr. York's statement, I think for the most part, we did ask all the questions we wanted to ask. Myself, it was, as I just explained, I thought it was too rich for where we're at. Bill had some unanswered questions, and that's, Bill's issue. But the fact of the matter was, this was all delivered to us in one night. We were expected to review that and try to get it. We have 1 week. We did answer the questions we could, and we took the vote we did. So I think the Budget Committee acted in the best interest, and as we all know, we were right down to the wire on the budget this year on every piece. The town and the school, we literally didn't have any days left, if you look at the way the laws are provised, for us to get to the budget hearings and get here in the dates we needed. So we didn't have any more time. And I'm sure if you look at the school board process in delivering the contract, they were very late.
Ma'am.
Kathleen Follis, 8 Mike Lane. I would like to ask the Budget Committee members, would any of you supported the contract had you had the 20-page slideshow to give you more information? Would your vote be different now?
First, I would hate to see this go down the route of confrontational, and it shouldn't be that way. No, my vote wouldn't change with the 20-page slide right now. Like I said, I thought about this harder and more than just about anything else I voted for this year, and I took a lot into play. And it wasn't. I mean, if I just looked at the impact on the teachers, well, I guess you would vote for it. But I don't believe that's my role. So that's why I'm here explaining why I voted. And feel free to ignore everything I say right now when you go into the voting booth and just make believe I just don't exist. But my job is to represent or look at all avenues. The teachers are excellent in this town. They do a great job. Teachers, like any and every other employee, deserve a raise when they do good work. It's costing us more on every angle. I do know from my end, not everybody is getting raises. And if they are also getting increases in other benefits that more than outweigh the raises. Now, that's not everybody either. So there's a whole route to look at. But again, last year, the voters said no. That played into part of my decision. I'm thinking, if they said no last year at $200,000 and change, am I just going to say I recommend over 600,000, I need to take into consideration the taxpayer, the teacher, the students, everybody. And the students, I believe, they got what Dr. Cochran, for the most part, was asking for. And Dr. Cochran made some sacrifices in the budget with School Board Association, cut that out. He understands, and we understood, what he wanted. And there were virtually no changes in the school board budget. And I know also Dr. Cochran agrees with the teacher contract, so that, but that, I had to look at it from a different point of view. But it's not confrontational. It really is not. When the budget committee member says they don't recommend it, it doesn't mean they're against the teachers. It does not mean they don't support the teachers. It does not mean they don't support the children. So please take it for what it's worth and feel free to ignore the 4 members that voted to not recommend.
I think that if the school board had tried to sell the contract to the budget committee in the same way it is selling it to the voters today, that it would have generated for me more questions to ask. If I asked those questions and got answers that made sense, it would help me vote one way or the other on this. I can't tell you whether I would have changed my vote or not, but I will tell you I would have had enough information to make an intelligent vote, in my opinion. Okay? 1 page of the dollar changes is not enough for me to generate any significant questions. This presentation today was excellent, and it's one that the budget committee should have received as well.
You want to wait for the response from the other school board, or is it a new
I
question?
just have just one statement to make. The budget committee, I keep hearing you say over and over again that the contract last year was voted down because people couldn't afford it. You have no basis to be sure that that's the reason why that contract was voted down. I have heard other reasons why people voted against that contract besides the dollar amount. So there may have been other things playing into. So if that's one of your big decision factors, saying that the people clearly said last year that they couldn't afford that much of an increase, that may not have been the reason why people voted against that contract, because there were a lot of things that went on with that contract. So I know you're a board that likes to be informed and have time to consider things, and I appreciate and value your responses to all of these questions, and I count on you as a citizen to look through things and get the information that you need from them. But that's a piece of information that maybe you're not aware of. Things that I have heard through town, just like everybody else does, that there were other reasons besides the dollar amount that contract was not supported.
Cindy Couture, I'm a member of the Budget Committee. I did vote in favor of the contract. It's been stated a couple of times now that the Budget Committee got a 1-page representation of the budget. I hate to disagree with my Budget Committee members, but we actually had a 6-page, very detailed description of the changes in the contract. Unfortunately, we did not have the wonderful presentation that we had here this afternoon. I think this presentation was outstanding, where we actually had the information in hand. I think it makes a difference to actually have somebody walk you through it. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but we did have 6 pages, not a single page that was given to the Budget Committee.
Yeah.
Thank you. Janine Lepore, 17 Greenwich Road. Someone had said a little bit earlier that we haven't provided a product the community can support, but I think we have to be clear that the product we're talking about is an excellent education. It's 12 years of an excellent education, and how are we going to ensure 12 years of excellent education? And I think we have to support the teachers. We have to value the teachers. We have to support them in what they do. Now, I would ask you to project yourselves 12 years into the future. The kids at AP Biology class now, 12 years from now, may be the ER doc that handles you when you come in with a heart attack. The kids in chemistry class may be the pharmacist that mixes your drugs for chemotherapy 12 years or so from now. The kids who are in physics, in the math courses, in the robotics team. They may innovate something that will change your life. So yes, we are selling education, and we're selling important education, excellent education for every single child. It matters whether you have children in the school systems or not. And I support this article. I hope other people really think strong and hard about it and support the teachers in this town. I'm very proud of my daughter who stood up earlier. She's pre-med at Wellesley College. She's worked very, very hard, and it hasn't come easy to her. And I credit her teachers with helping her get where she is. I thank them. I've always thanked them. I think I've been very vocal about my support of the teachers. I think they're an incredible group. I think they deserve your support, and I support Article 2. Thank you.
I have a question I want to ask Mr. Garrett. The product you were talking about was not necessarily, I'm clarifying, was not necessarily the 12 years of education. It's the one page that a voter sees sitting in front of him at the voter booth with that data and no other product to present the point. Is that right?
Correct. I mean, it has no bearing on the education. Of course, we all understand it. We're parents. We see what goes on here every day. I meet with and speak to my kids' teachers all the time. We all understand that. That's not a question at all. But when a voter, well, you know, if you've got again, I'm going to use a product. The product that we're trying to sell is the teacher's contract, not education. So when we're going out to sell the teacher's contract to the voter, right, what do they see? Okay, and I agree with Ms. Corbeil that, granted, not everyone is doing that. I understand that. Everybody understands that. But as of right now, a majority are voting with their wallet. And if they're voting with their wallet, what have we done to change that perception for them this year? And so while I absolutely agree that y'all want raises. All right, let's figure a path to get that the voter will accept. Because Mr. Pascucci was like, it's bigger than last year, and last year they voted it down for a much smaller number. So I'm actually trying to help you understand what it is that those voters who do vote their wallet, and up to this point, it is a majority.
And they only see this.
That's what they see? Well, absolutely, but we know that that's not always the case, Mr. Reed. So that's the point that I was making, not that we don't value education.
I don't know. Mr. Reed.
I call the question.
We have a motion to call the question. Do we have a second? Those in favor of stopping discussion on Article 2, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You'll see Article 2 on the ballot as written. We have a presentation.
As many of you may know, Trista Leva has been a school board member for the last 3 years and has chosen not to run for re-election. So at this point, I'd just like to thank her for her dedication to the school district. I know through my 2 years on the school board, I've really enjoyed working with her. I value her insight. We didn't always agree on things, but she presented it in a respectful manner. It always caused me to think, and I'd like to thank you very much.
This is also a good time, if anyone else has anything, any accolades they want to share, this is a good time to come to the mic and do so. If not, we can go on.
I did want to come up and just say it's been a real honor to serve the town of Litchfield on the school board. It is with regret that I have to not run this year. I would like to have run again, but our time constraints in our family have not allowed me to give the time to the school board, the dedication that you need to put into all of the efforts that go on behind the scenes that not everybody sees. So regretfully, I had to not run this year. But thank you for the honor.
Okay, shall we go on? Article 4, to see if the Litchfield School District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $50,000 to be added to the Building Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund.
You skipped one.
Did I skip one? I got a hot date, sorry.
Mr. Reagan,
Yes, sir.
can I make a motion to, for non-reconsideration, or is that what it is?
You can make a motion if you like. Non-reconsideration of what?
Non-reconsideration of previous articles.
We have a motion to restrict reconsideration of previous articles. Do we have a second? Second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. We have a motion accepted to restrict reconsideration of previously discussed articles. And here we are on Article 3, sorry about that. To see if the Litchfield School District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,662 for the purpose of funding a part-time computer teacher position at Griffin Memorial School. This has an estimated tax impact of 3 cents. It's recommended by the school board 3-1, and it's recommended by the Budget Committee 8-0. Mr. Cochran.
Thank you, Mr. Reagan.
Yep.
One of the aspects that we have spent a lot of time discussing and looking at and moving forward is how education is changing and what do we need to do as a school district to meet the challenges of the future. This article, I think, is a significant piece of this. We've invested some significant funds from 3 to 4 years ago at a point in time when we barely had internet working on a full-time basis to the point that we're at today. We have plenty of challenges coming forward, but I want to speak to where we need to go.
It's ironic, this is an IT discussion, isn't it? A computer teacher.
There have been several changes in the last couple of decades that have been thrown at schools.
Into the mic, please. Into the microphone.
Sorry. The schools that we have inherited have not really built for the goals that we have for them at this point in time. The industrial model school was built at a time when a lot of people left early and a lot of people didn't move on after high school. At this point in time, that model is unsustainable, and we're in a situation where not only we're expected to graduate 100% of students, and we're pretty much doing that here, but graduating 100% ready to go on to be immediately successful in career or college, and we send 80-some% of our students, of our graduates, to 2- and 4-year institutions. But the ability to leave school and immediately go into the workforce and not continue to learn has changed drastically. And as a result, we need a different...
This is one monitor. That's your other monitor. So
Okay,
bring your
but it's not.
So bring your mouse over. Is it to the right, guys?
There's no other monitor.
Hang on. Hang on. There it is. It's over here. Now your mouse is over here. Now you're in that monitor, and now just hit the arrow key.
Okay. We're in the situation where we need to prepare students for a very different future. And we need to do it by doing a couple of things. We need high expectations for all students, which we're transitioning to and I think doing very well. We need to transition to more independent learning. It needs to be more independent, including computer skills, pretty extensive, but not in place of what we're doing now, actually on top of what we're doing now. Increased cognitive rigor, more problem solving, more application. And technology allows us a lot of tools to do that. We're going to be implementing the Smarter Balance Assessment a year from May, if we hit our timelines. Computer adaptive testing is an assessment where instead of every student getting the same set of questions, and in NECAP, the questions are all clustered around grade level, which means that we get a lot of information for students who are right at grade level, less information in students who are at the very high end or the very low end. So some students are either bored or completely frustrated because they're 1 or 2 grade levels above or below. Computer adaptive testing allows the result of a question to determine the next question. So we get more information around every student about where exactly they are. In this also allows us some opportunity to ask more questions, but in order to get accurate information about where students are, they need the technology skills in order to answer questions. And I'm going to give you a couple of these. You know, produce a line or a set of lines. Basically, they need to be technology literate in terms of interfacing with computer software, things like this. You have a question where you're supposed to drag and drop items into an object, or take and manipulate items or multiple items on the screen and be able to answer questions based on that. But this really isn't about the sorts of assessments where students are asked to do tasks and use virtual manipulatives. It's really about the fact that the learning environment, this learning environment, which is adaptive, responsive, and gives unlimited feedback. It's like a tennis player or a soccer player practicing against a wall. The wall never misses and it never gets tired, and it can give good feedback on how you're doing. So we need to take a good advantage of this. So while it is about the assessment, it's not. It's about the alignment between what instruction needs to look like and the assessment needs to look like. Some more sample items. This is a sort of interactive screen that is typical of good instruction. You have a gear ratio situation, it's math, it's science, it's conceptual. Students can work with it, solve problems. It can be teacher directed, it can be individualized, and it allows students to go at their own pace and learn and see visually and conceptually. As you make the changes, you actually see how far the bike moves. So it's those sorts of learning environments that we need to engage students in and acquaint them with. That's a significant change for teaching. We need somebody, therefore, to work with our grade 3 and 4 students and teach them keyboarding, teaching them basic mouse function, teach them how to interact with learning interactive features, and also work with teachers. We have 3 computers in each elementary classroom. When students are finished their work and we're using the computers as centers, then students can be doing additional work. Somebody needs to be doing the upfront work to identify the websites, to work with teachers on the pedagogy and so on. So there's 2 major focuses to this half-time position. One is working with students directly. Second is infusing more and more technology into regular classroom whole instruction and individual and small group instruction for use in those other times. So those are the major goals, and that's why this position is so important. Thank you.
Further discussion on Article 3. Yes, ma'am.
Carrie Douglas, 9 Pheasant Street. I'd like to thank the board for putting this as a warrant article. I know there was a bunch of discussion about reclassifying teachers in order to avoid the process. So thank you for putting the warrant article. As an engineer, married to an electronics engineer, I appreciate the importance of teaching our children how to use computers, especially when you see where the future is going to go. So I do support this article, but I would like to also thank you for putting it as a warrant article. Thank you.
Further discussion on Article 3.
I promised Dr. Cochran I'd come up and speak to this article. I'm in support of it. It's Dr. Cochran made an outstanding presentation during the Budget Committee meeting. This is just a part of it, and if we need somebody to do that, it's probably a good idea. More so for those of you that go way back, they're asking. You know, this didn't happen in the past. This is good. This is the balance that we tried to get to, and we're here. So I'd like everybody to just take into consideration, if you don't know in detail what this is all about, ask Dr. Cochran. But this is a good idea as an addition, and I think it goes back to what piggybacks on what I said on the last warrant. This is what we need in the school to help get to where we want to be and to help correct deficiencies.
Just a quick comment, and I hate to give away my age, but I go back to when I was making a life decision in my life whether I should get out of the armed forces and go back to college, and what I should do in college, or stay in the service. And the guy that was my commanding officer at the time was a gentleman who had been in World War II. Where am I giving my age away? And got recalled for Korea. And when he was recalled, he was assistant dean of Rutgers. So his first love was really education. And he said to me, Phil, go back to school and take advantage of the liberal arts education you were getting. And here's my point. He says the most important thing an employer is looking for out of a college graduate is not so much what his concentration was, but did he learn how to think? And this appears to me as the tool to teaching how to think in this computerized day and age.
Mr. Garrett.
I'd like to know who voted against and why.
Voted yes or voted no? Voted against. So you want to know who voted no and why? You said voted yes and why? Okay, go ahead.
Can I talk now?
You make, yeah.
So I voted against. I was not convinced that we understand the problem that we're trying to solve, Dr. Cochran's slides notwithstanding. And we don't have any data to know how good or how poorly the students will interact with the test. And if it truly is so much different from how a elementary age student would use a computer, do we have a similar problem at the middle school, and why are we not thinking about having this either part of the computer instruction at the middle school? But I understand that's a pretty full slot for a full-time teacher. Do we need a half-time teacher there? I think we kind of grasped onto the fact that we were losing a teacher, and this was an opportunity to as was stated from the audience, was originally going to flip into that position, but now as a warrant article, I wanted to see some data that we have a real problem that we need to solve before we add a position to the district, because we know it's difficult to get rid of positions in the district.
Further discussion on Article 3. Yes, ma'am.
Just added information. We are piloting this test at the middle school in the current computer class. So we are incorporating that into our curriculum because we do have full-time teaching computer teachers in the middle school who are looking to solve these problems and evaluate these tests before we.
Thank you. Further discussion, Article 3. Hearing none, you'll find it on the ballot as written. Article 4, to see if the Litchfield School District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $50,000 to be added to the Building Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund established in 2004. This sum to come from June 30 fund balance available for transfer on July 1. No amount to be raised from taxation. This is recommended by the school board 4-0, recommended by the budget committee 7-1. Mr. Derek Barker. Oh, no, Mr. Frank Markowitz.
This warrant article, as you may know, the district maintains 2 capital reserve fund accounts. This one that is the subject of this warrant article would be to take up to the amount of $50,000 of the unassigned fund balance of June 30th of this year and transfer it to this capital reserve account, which is at the discretion of the school board after a public hearing is held, can use that money to bring into the general fund for unanticipated expenditures.
Do we have further discussion on Article 4?
Just one item of note. I guess it's a pet peeve whenever it says no amount to be raised from taxation. Although technically correct, these are funds that are from this year's taxation. So they are actually monies from the taxpayer. Thank you.
Further discussion, Article 4. Hearing none, you'll find it on the ballot as written. Article 5, to see if the Litchfield School District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $36,700 to purchase security equipment necessary to upgrade external access control and panic alarms at Griffin Memorial School Litchfield Middle School and Campbell High School. This is has an estimated tax impact of 4 cents. It's recommended by the school board 4-0. It's recommended by the budget committee 7-0 to 1. Mr. Frank Markowitz.
The school board this year created a subcommittee entitled Building and Planning Advisory Committee. Basically, we are charged with the responsibility to look at the capital improvement requirements to the buildings and grounds in the district. When I first came here, everybody kept referring to Campbell High School as the new high school, but to put it in perspective, it is now 13, my understanding is 13 years old, so it's no longer a new high school. So what this money does, the subcommittee made the recommendation to the school board that accepted the recommendation as a start-off point, if you will, to start looking at capital improvements to the buildings. This warrant article will afford the opportunity for the district to upgrade the current external access controls to all 3 buildings, as well as to upgrade the panic alarms at all 3 buildings as well.
Further discussion on Article 5? Yes, sir.
I am on that committee, and I wholeheartedly agree that the safety and security of the kids in school is paramount. However, I disagree that this should be a warrant article. The safety and security of our children should always be in the operating budget. It's what it's obviously education is what we do, but first and foremost, we entrust the people in this building to keep our kids safe, right, while they're here. And unfortunately, if this warrant article passes, that poses major problems to the safety and security of our children. Not to say that we go backwards, however, we're not going forwards either, because no means no, and we're not going to spend those dollars to. If it doesn't pass. Sorry. So again, I don't believe in putting the safety of our children on a warrant article.
Further discussion on Article 5? Hearing none. You'll find it on the ballot as written. Before we close, I think that's it, right? Before we close, I'd like to remind everyone that the warrant articles discussed tonight will appear on the ballot as written or as amended. The next, voting day is on March 11th from 7 a.m. and it will close at CHS, and the auditorium will close no later than 7 p.m. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting? Seconded? Do we have a second? All of those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Have a nice day.